No studio audience. Wonder where she is. I don't know. It's early. She's probably sleeping. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another video. Yay. Another video. I'm not really, in my professional attire. But I figured I would make some use of these early mornings. My partner is a high school teacher. So I kind of have to be up early. So I thought I'd make use of it. And last night I started working on some ideas that I thought might improve the university. It's time to go back to university.
Is that your best?
And it's time to go back, and I'm just really depressed about it. I don't think that there's a lot going on in higher ed. Not just my institution, almost every institution is not really forward thinking about what's happening and what's going on and how to, get the ship's hull repaired. So not thinking about how to bail out the water, which is kind of where everybody is.
Oh.
But how to repair and make it a little bit more seaworthy. So if the waves and the ocean currents and all these things have changed, why still put the same boat out to sea? So this video is some brief ideas. And if you like any of them, I can do a longer video on any of them about how to fix higher ed, in my opinion, how to make college a little bit more accessible, amenable, better for people, all that. So I have my little PowerPoint that I made here. It's not a complex PowerPoint by any means. It's one that, I think that... we'll take a look at it. I think it focuses on what we need to talk about. So the first thing I would change about higher education is I have flexible attendance. What does this mean? So a lot of my colleagues, a lot of university classrooms have a large percentage of the grade attached to attendance. And I tried this last semester, and it was a huge failure because life is too complex and too fraught and too frail for anybody to be expected to sit at a particular time in a particular place on a campus that doesn't provide easy access, easy parking, any kind of discounted way to get to it, to make them come into a very uncomfortable room. Now, this is a classroom I teach in, and it's like the cheapest plastic desks imaginable, a chalkboard, and a computer that sometimes works but doesn't often have audio. It would be much better to teach like this, using OBS, which is free, using PowerPoint, which is free, using a microphone that cost me $100. I have a very expensive soundboard, that I like, but you don't really have to have that. You could get an easy kind of soundboard mixer off the internet for nothing now. But I got one of the first Roadcasters, and I mean, that's pretty much a classroom, but the technology is there to have what we call high flex attendance. So my proposal would be students can come in person. Students can watch a live stream of the class that's being administered by somebody who knows what the hell they're doing. The average age of faculty is like 77, so they're not going to be very good with the technology. In fact, young people aren't even very good with the technology. The number one thing, the biggest lie that everyone was told was digital natives. Do you remember digital natives?
Oh.
The idea that young people are just better with technology? It's not true, because what's young people's primary way? And when I say young people, I mean people under 30. How do they use the internet primarily? Not a tablet, not a laptop, a phone. They use a phone. And why not? A phone is like, $1,500 or something now. So why not make that your primary device for communication of all kinds? So they are on a phone. They don't really know how to do something like what I'm doing now. You can learn pretty easily. I'm an old guy. I learned pretty easily. But you have a live stream they can attend. And you also record it so that they can watch it later. I was thinking about this as Netflix and other streaming services move more into live events, the replay. And this would allow you to increase enrollment in a class to some crazy amount. And you can save a ton of money on labor costs. And we'll get to that in a minute too, other ways of doing it. But flexible attendance, if they can't be there because of money, because of family issue, because of health, because of mental health, physical health, whatever, let's make the classroom more accessible to the modern student. That's all I'm saying. Flexible attendance. It doesn't mean that they can come and go when they want. It just means the modality of how they access the class is really kind of up to them. I think I'm going to do this with me in the corner. Can we do that? Nope. Well, it doesn't look too good, does it? We're going to have to figure this out. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so, oh, God. You know, a little pre-show goes a long way. Okay, I don't know why the whole thing resets every time I do it. But, you know, this is kind of the point I'm trying to make, is that you really need somebody who understands the tech to do it. So you have a recording that can be accessed. You have a live stream that can be accessed. And you have the physical in-person classroom. And students can choose what modality suits them that day, because thinking about modality for a semester and consistency with a semester is not a value students have. A lot of universities are like, well, the students chose an in-person class or they chose an online class. That modality might not sit with them well for particular parts of the subject matter. So they need to have options of how they would attend. So that's what I would say to that. And then also you can have, another thing I think you could have is departmental-wide assessments or curriculum-wide assessments that are digital, that are online, that are open for a certain amount of time. And the students can do those assessments online, and they can be graded collectively. And that can save the labor. Because the issue about this is like, well, the university is obviously going to put, if you could put 50 people in a class, you do it like this, where they can watch the videos and stuff. They might want to take that class. If it's not rooted to a particular time of day, anybody could really take that class. So you would want it to have kind of assessments that would work for the replays. I got this idea watching Netflix. Okay, outsource the core courses. This is going to be a controversial one. So every university has a core, classes that you have to take, and these are the classes students are like, why do I have to take this? Why do I have to take this? There are several problems with the core curriculum across universities. One is there's no justification for it other than rolling your eyes and saying, oh, these dumb students, they need to know how to write. They need to know philosophy. They need to know their history. Why do they need to know that in this particular form, in this bad classroom? If the core courses are so important, why are they not the highest compensated labor at the university? The thing about universities a lot of people don't know is if you're very good at what you're doing, your reward is less teaching. Professors are not teachers. A lot of them don't like it. When I was in graduate school, one of my supervisors said, teaching is like jury duty. You try to get out of it, but you do have to serve. You have to show up and try to get out of it as much as you can. But eventually you will, you probably have to serve. And then just do, whatever it takes to get through and make it work. And then go back to the real work, which is your research. And that's the way most professors R1s see it, as a problem, as something in the way. They're also probably not the best people trained and prepared for the educational psychology, pedagogical theory, educational theory. They're not up to date on that stuff. And they're also probably the people least likely to connect with students would be, whatever random faculty have been hired. It's like, oh, you have to go and teach this basic intro-level class. It might have been really easy for them. They might have been exceptional students. A lot of professors were weird students. They sat in the front row. They came early. They enjoyed writing papers. Weird people, right? This is not the norm. This is not the norm in terms of the college experience. So these people aren't going to make a connection with people who are like, I'm not really sure why I'm here. This isn't really for me. I just need a job. So making the connection to those people and moving them into a more of an appreciation of education and intellectual work outside of its fiscal reward value, which is the only defense in town. I don't understand why faculty don't make a better defense on this, to say, well, this is an important part of life and pleasure and enjoying yourself and participating in culture and having a valuable and meaningful life and a place to live. All this stuff, literature, art, history, philosophy, sociology, anthropology, all these things are incredibly important to understand because it gives you a richer palette from which to kind of paint your own story or write your own story. But the people they hire for these core courses are typically contract faculty who are stressed out. They have no job security. They have no health care. And they do what they can. They work hard, but they're not the people who are probably best suited to teach it. The people who are best suited to teach it are people who have been rewarded by the system because they're excellent thinkers and scholars and communicators. They've been rewarded by being given one Ph.D. seminar a year as their teaching load, or 2. Or they're like, I have 7 advisees for a Ph.D., so I can only teach 2 seminars. And they're like, okay, yeah, that's normal. So what you need to do is, if you don't want to outsource the core courses, you need to pay the best per hour rate to your faculty for teaching these courses, because these are the courses that are going to set the tone for the rest of your university. And when people are juniors and seniors and they're in major courses and they can't write or they can't present, it's the fault of these core courses. So here's what I would say. Outsource these. A lot of core courses are available on YouTube. So many good YouTube courses out there. You have edX, you have Harvard online, Yale online, and they offer some of their best lectures for free on things like philosophy, literature, etc. If you're not going to pay for good teaching, then just don't pay at all. And don't make them go to a bad course. I don't know how many students have come to me and said, I'm doing terrible in my philosophy class. I'm doing terrible in my literature class. My professor makes no sense, and they're not friendly, and I don't know what they want from me, and they're very awkward. I just tell them, here, just go online and search for the thing you're reading and watch a Yale or Harvard lecturer or a top lecturer who's made a video, watch that. And they ace the class based on the YouTube video. So why not outsource the entire thing? Why not outsource the entire thing and just say, here are the videos that you can watch. Here's the range of videos you can watch. And then we want you to write something about what you've read and what you've seen. And then again, faculty can distribute that grading work across however they want to do it. In fact, that might be a good role for a lot of the adjuncts, is to assess that writing, but maybe not. A lot of the adjuncts are not so great because nobody wants to teach these intro courses. I don't really know why, but I do know why. Professors aren't really teachers. But you've got to either change the compensation, which no one's going to do because there's no money, or you outsource the core. Now, the core is usually something like 28, 30 hours, 33 hours of classes that you have to pay for. And since there's no other defense other than, well, college is going to make you a millionaire, which is so stupid. I don't know why people say this to people. Only you can make you a millionaire. You have to find a job. You have to work hard. You have to save. You have to have a financial plan. No one's going to do it for you. So the idea that you're going to have some job that's going to pay you $1 million is not a good defense. It's a defense about quality of life and culture, and defending culture, and defending a world that's kind of where you do want to have leisure time, not just to watch Netflix or whatever you want, or TikTok or whatever you're watching, but a defense that will allow you to talk about the bigger stuff, the stuff that's really meaningful. What is it to have a beautiful life? What is art? These kind of questions. And you're not equipped for that with courses taught by somebody with a master's degree who's teaching at 4 other institutions and is stressed out about how they're going to pay their rent that month. That's not going to lead to a productive classroom experience where people are focused. You're going to compensate the people fairly, or outsource it. And have it completely outsourced. And you could do it on YouTube, and those lecturers are better because they have financial security and job security, and they have academic freedom, at least for now. They have some kind of academic freedom. So I would say get rid of the core. Now that's going to free up 30-something hours, which is going to come into play later. The next thing we need is creativity forward. Now this is a little bit more of a vision or a principle that the university should operate on, which is creativity forward, which is all assignments and all work should be creative. It shouldn't be repetitive. It shouldn't be responsive. It shouldn't be regurgitory. It should be creative, creating things with other people. Students don't like group projects because the group project is about meeting a particular standard of the instructor, and everyone's kind of like scared to offer something because they're scared to get an F. If we had creativity forward assignments and things like this, it would be rewarded on how creative was your effort, what was the attempt like, how did you attempt to create a new spin or a new take on an old idea. So this could be anything from changing the language of something in a philosophy class, or changing the approach to how it's talked about. Translation might be a great way to do it, putting it into more modern language, or using more modern technology to get something across, or saying, this reminds me of this pop culture or this other thing I read or something else. The things that young people read in high school, very different than what I read. And so it would be nice to see them making those connections back to the high school curriculum, back to things they did in high school or things they've done with their friends, and making those connections, because creativity forward is going to be the way that they preserve the ship in the surging seas. If we just continue to teach correspondence to a value set that's 20 years old, which is what happens at my university, 20 or 30 years old at my university, well then that's not going to help when all the currents are different and the waves are larger than anybody predicted back then. We have to be flexing the creative muscle, and we have to be creating things. It's sort of like rhetorical invention rather than repetitio or the old recitation. We need so all assignments should have this principle. What are the students creating? How are the students creating? What is novel about what they're making in my class? And that should be the principle, and that would help higher ed quite a bit. Next one is one that I steal from my old students from way back when, who went to the University of Texas. I was a high school teacher at one point in time. Yeah, it's true. And at the University of Texas, they set up and got the University of Texas to approve a student-driven curriculum of 1 hour for credit classes on things that students would teach. Now, remember back a minute ago when I said outsource the core, that's going to free up about 30 hours. Now, New York State requires a minimum for a college degree, New York State Board of Education. I don't know what your state or your country might require, but it's 120 credit hours, right? So a typical class that meets for 3 hours a week is a 3-credit class by United States figuring. I don't know how they do it in Europe, but I better learn soon, I might have to run away. But a 3-hour class, 3 hours a week is 3 credits for the semester. Most students take between 12 and 15 credits on average. Now, that average is moving up. A lot of students are taking 18 because they want to save money. They're like, oh my God, this is so expensive. If I could pay one semester's less tuition, that's a significant amount of savings against my future self for loans. Because in the United States, we're loan driven. So everyone's got to get a loan and borrow money to go to school. Student-driven curriculum. If you don't have that core curriculum, if you outsource it, and they're doing the basics of Western civilization, the basics of literature, the basics of philosophy, through YouTube videos with some of the best lecturers in the world, they're going to get stimulated and inspired. Unlike now, where they despise and hate their adjunct faculty because the adjunct faculty are not supported properly to be able to teach without spreading a huge amount of anxiety and stress and unfamiliarity in the class, or boiling it down to a simplistic sort of quiz, lecture kind of tennis match, or like Pong, like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Like that doesn't really teach anybody anything except to say college is a sham, which then those people go out, become adults, they vote, and then they vote against supporting higher ed because they're like, well, I went to college and it was a big joke. Everything I needed to know I learned from when I got my first job. And so this is the end result of that defense of saying, oh, well, you're going to get a job from this. This is why you have to take these classes. They're important for your employer is going to want you to know how to write. True, but that's not the only reason one would want to write. It helps one with stress. It helps one assemble the world in ways that you own. You own the terminology. So important. So after they do this outsourced core curriculum and they're inspired by some of the best lecturers in the world, a university committee can go through YouTube or go through online videos and say, look, these are the ones that meet our standards. Let's make this the basket of videos that they can watch for their 3-hour philosophy class and take the test. And then there you go. Now, the students then have something like 30, so much time. Why not offer a curriculum that's student-driven for ones who want more? I want a little bit more philosophy. I'm interested in this Plato guy, this Kant guy. Now you have something that's of interest to your best faculty, the ones who are rewarded with less teaching. They might be like, oh, that would be cool to do a seminar of students who've made an A in the outsourced philosophy curriculum. Now I can do something serious with them because they've been taught by the best Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Oxford lecturers in the world, Cambridge, Oxford, wherever. The best universities in the world, their lecturers are on YouTube. Because these people like to teach and they like to speak and they're good at it. So they put themselves out there. We should take advantage of that because then it will lead to the students being able to say, well, I want a class in this, I want a class in that. And then it could be delivered. And that's going to help with retention. That's also going to make your university very unique. And it's also going to make the students have some ownership over what they're being taught. They wanted a class like this. They got it. Now they have some ownership of it. You're going to see a very different kind of performance. It's not going to be a performance of how do I cheat or sneak my way into some points here? What's the minimum I can do to get an A? How can I make the professor think that I like them? All of this bad advice that you get, like be friends with the professor. Always write down, do exactly what they want. They'll love you. all this kind of bad advice becomes now more of a focus on, this is what I want to learn more about, deliver it. I will take that class. And then you don't have problems with enrollment or anything like that. The reason that electives fail, and there aren't very many electives these days, is because the requirements, given the core curriculum and things like that, are too much. And they need to be cut way, 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 way down. And then you get a lot more student choice over what they could take. Because if you get the credit, like a CLEP or an AP test, it'll count for your in-degree hours, but you're still, you could still take some extra classes and kind of expand your mind that way, I think. Another controversial one, and my last idea, is alternative billing. Several years ago, there was a woman in Texas who decided to IP herself to pay for college. She said, if you invest in my college, I'll pay college, I'll give you 2% of my earnings over the next 30 years. I think universities should do this because it's better than hiring a bunch of like Nimrods to do outreach for money, which is what happens. You get some people and they're like, oh, I'm from development. Let's talk about supporting the university. Da-da-da. And it's all just generic, or it relies too much on sports. And it doesn't rely on the direct experiences of the class. The university will fund faculty teaching, including adjunct teaching, better, and try to compete to get the best contract faculty and the best tenure track faculty if they went to alternative billing, which is in lieu of paying tuition, you give us 3.5% of your earnings until you retire. Okay, now that's big money. That's a lot more than, I think, taking out a loan. But if you did the math, you'd find that that's a much better deal. And for the university, it's a much better deal because it's a guaranteed income in a contract. A guaranteed income for 20 years rather than having to worry about the 5 or 6 year graduation cycle. This should be an option. It shouldn't be mandatory, but it's definitely a way around the student loan system. And also it's a way for universities to be a lot more competitive with the tuition rate and attract the students they want that give them the reputation or the data they want as they present themselves to the world and say, hey, come here. You can give us, you can be on the plan where until you die, you give us 2%, or until you retire, you give us 3.5% of your income. That would be great because, they'll leverage their future income to get a degree, especially a degree that's structured where you're going to have excellent teachers. They'll be well compensated. And everything is going to be focused on making sure that you're the best possible citizen and member of society that you could be. And I think these are so I think this is one of the best ideas. It's a little weird, but I think it's one that if people IPO themselves, that might be an option that allows them to pay this a little bit better than the predatory loan system or the bankrupt student loan system. At some point, we're going to have to deal with that. Think about how much productivity in the GDP is lost due to people making student loan payments. They don't buy a car. They don't buy a house. They really can't. They can't do it. And the sad thing is that harms everybody. Student loan debt harms everybody because these people are not participating in the economy in the ways that the economy has been written to predict that they would, if that makes sense. So, those are some of my ideas about some interesting ideas that universities could experiment with to improve things. We really have to be creativity focused, creativity vision. What is it I'm making my students create? We have to be supportive of our good teachers, people who want to teach and want to get better at it. We have flexible attendance options and radically flexible ways to pay for it. I'm Dr. Steve Yano. Thanks for watching the video. Please watch another video on the channel. Oh, and like, comment, subscribe. I love having you here. More videos to come since I have to get up early and I have these ideas, so why not? I'll see you guys later. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Ghost is all that